those criteria are not going to be met, then really we would refuse the investment.
What about the industrial relations climate? Do you think, this might sort of scare investors away?
Well, I think, investors who are accustomed to the global markets, for example, in Europe, etc., understand that the countries go through these iterations, negotiations, etc. Particularly, look what's happening in countries in terms of protesting and so on, where countries have to take harsh decisions about wage increases or even rollbacks. And I think that they understand that that's a cycle. They have seen that happen in many countries before. And I think it's really for them to understand how effectively we are dealing with it that allows them to have some degree of comfort to say, yes, this has been handled properly.
Now, you listed all the advantages that we have. That's basically in our favor to, attract investors. What works against us, though? Some issues that invesTT would like to iron out to ensure that we don't have these challenges that might keep away investors.
Well, I think one of the big challenges that we have is that the brand Trinidad and Tobago is not well known. And that's something that as a country we have to really build and promote. We have to ensure that when we say Trinidad and Tobago, people automatically recognize us for certain things. And that is some work that we have to do over the next year. Working with a number of agencies, including the National Energy Corporation, the TTIFC, the Tourism Development Corporation, etc. Of course, one of the concerns that people would always have is that when they come to a country, it is safe. And one of the things that we do as part of the work is that we ensure that people get information as to what are the issues around moving around the town, which areas might be difficult places to be in, at certain times, etc. As in any major city, you have hotspots, as people call it, where investors are aware. In fact, many of the investors say to us, when we come here, give us a day, we just want to walk around the place. And they actually go walking through the city, something that sometimes we ourselves don't do now. And for them to experience for themselves what really, because hearing it from invesTT is nice and fine, but really understanding it from the perspective of seeing it themselves.
You want to get a first-hand view.
Right, and talking to the people on the streets, I think gives them a much better view. And so
what about, do you get feedback? Do they express their concerns about our crime rate at all?
Well, people have. In fact, what they're saying is that, if you look at the internet, for example, it carries a lot of negative images and reports on us. But some of them say, if you compare it back to some of the other countries, even in the region, who have similar crime rates, you might get 100 hits in Trinidad saying that we have a high crime rate. You might get 2 in a country with the same level of crime activity. So it is also the exposure that we give to it. And I think that countries that are basically driven by tourism have managed their situation better. Of course, managing the situation better is one aspect, but also reducing it is something that we all have to work on ensuring that happens.
Now, one of the challenges you mentioned was exposing the brand Trinidad and Tobago more so. But what about how easy is it to set up shop in Trinidad and Tobago? Because we've heard in the past that, when investors, foreign direct investors, when they try to set up shop in Trinidad and Tobago, it's so difficult to just get your business up and running because of so many red tape. Is that one of the feedback you get from investors?
Well, the global report on ease of doing business in Trinidad and Tobago did in fact indicate that it was relatively difficult to do business in Trinidad. And the major reasons we saw would have been in 2 areas. One was in the setting up of the business itself, the registration process, the obtaining of your tax numbers, your NIS numbers, etc. And 2, in construction permitting in terms of town and country planning, EMA, drainage, etc. What we have done at invesTT is we have set up a virtual one-stop shop where the investor comes to us and we set account manager to work with him. So really, we try to avoid him having to meet with all these agencies by himself. If he has to be there, we will go with him. We will deal with the agencies up front to make sure it is a smoother process. We also ensure that if there are any hiccups, that we go to the relevant authorities and work with them to see how we can smoothen the process. At the same time, we are signing service level agreements with these agencies, memorandum of understanding really, as to how we can improve those areas. Because we have targeted to improve significantly in terms of the startup of a business. One of the big bugbears now is the obtaining of a VAT certificate, for example. And that's something that we're working with the Board of Inland Revenue on and the Ministry of Finance through our line ministry, Ministry of Trade and Industry. In the area of construction permitting, we're working with WASA, the drainage, EMA, etc., to ensure that we are aware what the issues are. If it's a documentation issue, we get the appropriate documents in place. If it's a matter of signing forms, if it's a matter of clarity around what is required, that people are fully aware. I think transparency is what we're looking for up front, so that people are fully aware of the full requirements.
Then you would disagree with statements made by the central bank governor that the economy is in a slump?
Well, I don't know what's their definition of a slump, really, but I think that, you know, if you look at growth, for example, and a 1% growth coming out of negative growth is improving. Many economies would have to, in the new environment, the new order, I think, would have to creep again before they start running. And I think any change in direction is going to be positive, where we move from negative zone into positive. And if we can achieve that, I think it will be a significant benefit to the country in terms of improving confidence level, and also to the investors coming in from the outside. How
do we really keep a track of what economic activities are really going on in the country? Because while the finance minister got up in parliament and said, you know, the country economy is not in a slump, economists are saying, well, you know, they were disappointed by his statement, because they basically said he did not have any facts to back it up. You say the economy is not in a slump, but show us the figures. You know, how do we know that the economy is strong? And they're saying, you know, Central Statistical Office, for instance, their information is like, months behind, or even a year behind. How can we really gauge our performance, our economic performance, if we have nothing to back it up?
Well, I don't think that we have nothing. What I think is that we need to create a structure. I mean, CSO clearly needs to improve in terms of the speed and reliability of bringing information to markets. And we have had, in fact, discussions with them in terms of providing us with information, us providing them with information on a regular basis. Clearly, the central bank and the Ministry of Finance would have information, and I think it would be very important for the media to probably discuss with them what are some of the indicators that point towards either slump or not slump, in terms of, you know, what is the basis for making those pronouncements.
Do you think, you know, if somebody comes up and say, you know, we're in a recession, that sends a negative message to investors, and is something that we just don't want to give out?
Well, I think any time a recession is talked about, sometimes people say it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Even if it's not yet there, you kind of bring it into being by saying it too often. I think as an investor, investors generally, entrepreneurs, understand risk. Understand what are the benefits of entering a market when it's in recession and otherwise. And I think you need to look at that as some of the ways in which even countries that are going through difficult times are still able to attract investment.